Hi, my name is Dr. George Hillman. I am the Department Chair and Professor of Educational Ministries and Leadership here at Dallas Theological Seminary. And what I want to do over the next couple of moments is introduce you to the concept of doing an environmental scan. As you're working on your educational cycle project for this class, one of the steps is the strategic planning step, where you have looked at core values, your mission, the environmental scan, and the vision. The environmental scan, specifically, that is understanding what are the needs both inside your local church or ministry, but also what are the needs in the community where you find yourself doing ministry. My good friend Aubrey Malfers defines it this way. An environmental scan involves scanning the general environment in search for what's going on in our changing world. It also involves scanning the church environment in search of how God is working through churches around the world to minister in response to our changing world. So there is an internal scan, what's happening inside, but then also an external scan of what's happening in the outside world. I love this quote from Lois LeBar. Lois LeBar was a professor at Wheaton University for many, many years, and she was actually one of the people who was foundational in the creation of the educational cycle that you're using today. Her influence is so impactful in what we do here at Dallas Theological Seminary. She says that needs are God's built-in equipment for contacting human nature. You want to know what are people's needs so that you can bring the never-changing gospel message of the Word of God to meet real, tangible needs. So again, internally, looking inside your local church. Now, your church might look a little different than this church, but what is happening inside your church? And then externally, this is a map of Dallas, Texas. You can insert a map for your own community. Maybe you're in a city larger than Dallas. Maybe you're in a city significantly smaller than Dallas. But what's happening in your community as well? So the internal part, the internal scan, we want to know who is already coming. Can we describe the demographic information? So things such as how many families, how many single adults, how many children, what's the average weekly attendance? What's the ethnic diversity inside our local congregation? Gender diversity, again, how many men, how many women? Generational diversity, some of the groups such as baby boomers or Gen X or millennials. How many volunteers do you have in your church? And then finally, what's the giving average for weekly, monthly, and yearly? That's all giving you information so you know who is actually coming to your church. Now, when you look outside the context of your church, the first thing you want to define is where is your community? So some of the things here. First, how far do people drive? Are you a local neighborhood church where people drive from just a very close distance or even a walking distance? Or are you more of a regional church where people drive a great distance? That's going to help you understand how far your reach is. Are there some boundaries, such as most of the people in your church are on this side of a lake or on this side or that side of a railroad track or a major highway? If you're in a metropolitan area, are there certain cities, maybe even counties that you draw from? Are there even more specific certain zip codes that you draw from? Just helping you understand who is actually coming to your church to participate in your ministries. How would you describe your location? Are you a urban location, a suburban location, more of a rural location? And also looking at what's the total population. Dallas, Texas has several million people. Some of you are in cities that are significantly larger than Dallas, Texas. And others of you are in cities that are significantly smaller than Dallas, Texas. So what's the total population? How would you characterize that population? Is it an older population that's actually shrinking? Or is it a young population that's actually growing? And then finally, as you look at your community, how many people are unchurched? Do you know those types of numbers? So once you just discover where your community is, where you're drawing people from, then you want to look at who's in that community. So some of these questions are the same questions you asked of who was coming to your church or who was coming to your ministry. What's the average age in the community? Educational level. Is this a highly educated population that maybe has a college degree? What's the reading level? Those types of things. Marital status, gender, ethnicity, income and employment. What do people do to earn a living in that community? And even things such as entertainment. What do people do on weekends? So once you understand those things of who's in the local community, you see the city skyline of Dallas down here in the corner. You could insert your own skyline. But you also want to understand, well, what's happening regionally, what's happening nationally, and what's even happening globally. So some of the things of understanding, where are we heading as a culture? What are some of the futuristic trends? What are the attitudes towards technology, attitudes towards education, economic issues that the world is dealing with, social issues, political views, and most importantly, what are the spiritual views, again, in your community, but also in your region, in your nation, and what do you see as the spiritual views that are happening in the world? So an internal scan, what's happening inside your local church, who is already coming, an external scan, defining what is your community, defining who's in your community, and then finally looking at broader ramifications of culture regionally, nationally, and even globally. So why do we do an environmental scan? Real 6 reasons why. Number 1 is that we want to base our planning on actual hard data. We want to look at demographic information. We don't want to go on gut level instinct. And so being able to do some hard research to get the data to know who's coming to your church and who's out in the community that you need to be ministering to. It allows you to helps you to respond to change quickly. If you're looking outside the context of your church walls to see what's going on in the community, when you see a need in the community, you as a church can minister quickly to it. It helps you overcome your blind spots about bias and tradition. Please hear me. Tradition is not a bad thing. But if your church is doing ministry the way you did ministry 30 years ago, and you're expecting the same results in today's world, while the Word of God never changes, the needs of the people around you, you need to be connecting with those needs. Becoming aware of ministry opportunities. Maybe you discover that there's a large refugee population that's in the community that you were not aware of. Maybe you become aware that there's a large population of single parents that you would love to start a ministry for. It helps you guard against some of the coming dangers. If you are looking beyond the horizon, you're going to see what some of the trends are happening in culture so that you as a church know how to respond to those trends. And then finally, it helps you identify ministry partners. So again, let's talk about that concept of maybe a refugee ministry or a ministry to single parents. You might discover that there's already a great evangelical ministry in the local community ministering to that population. And so you might decide as a church or as an organization, instead of you trying to create something from scratch, you want to partner with that organization that is already on the ground doing ministry. I am all about kingdom growth, even more than my own church's growth. And so being able to understand who's out there in the local community. So where do you find this type of information? Census Bureau, organizations, secular organizations like Gallup, religious organizations such as George Barna. Maybe you want to survey the people in your church. Maybe you want to survey the people in your community. Reading the local newspaper, reading books, contacting the Chamber of Commerce, actually contacting the city and finding out from city officials what some of the needs are in the community. Maybe you want to do some focus groups inside your church or even outside your church. And you also want to look at your ministry records, look at your attendance records, look at your giving records. If you are seeing a ministry that it has been dying and has not been growing, maybe you need to do something like an Ed Cycle project to revitalize that ministry, or maybe you decide that you need to put resources someplace else. I want to end with this great quote from the awesome hockey player Wayne Gretzky. He says, "It's not as important to know where the puck is now as to know where it will be." It is so true for you as a church as well. If you're only reacting to the immediate needs today, you're always going to be playing catch up. What you as a leader, what you need to do is raise your gaze above the horizon to see what is out there in the world. And when you see it coming, you will know how to respond. I'm looking forward to working with you through your educational process here at Dallas Theological Seminary. And the entire team working with you on EML 101 is looking forward to working with you specifically on the project that you're going to be doing for this class. Thanks for listening.